Well, hello there! Once again, welcome back to me interviewing, and today I'm going to be interviewing TV presenter and hotelier Noel Cunningham. How are you doing today?
I'm extremely well, Jack, and nice to be on with you and nice to meet you. I know all about you, but I've never actually met you. So now it's extremely cool to meet people online. So I'm meeting you online and very happy to do so. And greetings from Donegal. I'm up here in the hills of Donegal. We survived the storms. The mountains are covered in blanketed and beautiful white snow. The lake is shimmering in the sunshine. So all around, it's a beautiful day.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So you've had quite a long and brilliant life, and you're gonna have an even longer life. So what I was wondering was, what did you do before you became a hotelier and a TV presenter? Because you seem to have done a lot.
Well, I guess there's so many strands to my life and so many different aspects of my life. I grew up in a very rural Donegal back in the 50s and 60s. It was, shall we just say, very different. It was very difficult to be different. It was very difficult to not be part of the GA culture, to run with the lads. I suppose from a very early stage, I knew that I was gay, although nobody realized that there were gay people in the world up in this part of the world in those days. It wasn't spoken of. You didn't read about it in papers. There were no sort of meeting places. It really was the love that dare not speak its name. And my first trip to Dublin when I was, oh gosh, late teens or maybe even early 20s, to go to a gay bar was really frightening and scary and challenging. So I was always different. And I guess, like a lot of people who experience, a certain stress with life, or that they're in a situation that is slightly problematic, or that they're being bullied, or that they're sort of not part of the pack, they think that if they travel, that somehow or other their problems will be solved. So maybe because of that background, that's what made me kind of take off at a fairly early stage to work my way around the world. I'm convinced that that's what was the cause of my wanderlust, and I've never lost that wanderlust. But now, having come back to Donegal, I'm very happy to have roots again. But certainly in those early days, it was very exciting too, because somehow or other, from when I was 18 up until my early 30s, I went around the world 4 or 5 times. I took local leave on cruise ships, because you could do that in those days, because if you pitched up in Sydney and you were due some time off, the company just basically would have been much happier if you took local leave. It cost them less money than paying a huge amount of money to fly you back to London or Dublin. And I availed of all of those opportunities. I trekked through South America. I did the South Sea Islands. I did New Zealand, Australia. I was traveling and doing things when not really many people were doing it. Some of the great pioneers and explorers, of course, but later, about 10 or 15, 20 years later, all my nephews and nieces would take off to Australia or backpack around Europe. But in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't as common, and even going on a sun holiday was something people didn't do. It was just a different world, and all you young, cool guys forget that the Ireland of those times was a kind of a different place. So I was both lucky and in some ways unlucky, because as anybody will tell you, if you have problems in life or you're met with challenges, you should really face them down and try and deal with them, rather than run away from them thinking it'll be all right. Now that's easier said than done, and I didn't do it. But I know now with hindsight that I would have almost been better, but it would have been not so easy in the era in Ireland that I grew up in. It was difficult being gay. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of basically no acceptance that you were different, and from that came all sorts of abuse, and that's the reality, and that eventually had a big formative effect on my life. And I guess that's why I started to drink, and drank too heavily as well, to the point that it became a major problem.
And luckily now you're actually out of the drinking, and you came out and everything, and so and you're quite accepted in Ireland. So how do you feel now that younger people and yourself now in the 2020s are much more accepted in being gay and being different and whatnot?
I never really came out, I suppose. That wasn't what people of my generation did. You hid behind a veneer, and you told lies, and you lived a lie, and you hurt people along the way because you might have a girlfriend because it suited, that it kept people off your back because you were afraid to say that, look, I am gay. So you never actually came out, and you just hoped that the way life would kind of unfurl, that somehow or other some kind of peace would follow. I started to drink extremely heavily. It became a real problem. Then a family tragedy. My sister and her husband were very sadly killed in a car accident here in Donegal. I was in Southeast Asia at that point of my life. And that was the time that I came home after many years. And that was extraordinarily difficult. Immediately after the funerals, I went back again, but I returned a year later for their anniversary. And it was then that their daughter, who was only a child herself, recognized that with me there was a problem, that I was drinking too heavily. And she had the courage and the guts to say to me, Uncle Noel, you need to sort out your life. You need to stop drinking. And coming from a child who just lost her parents in a dreadful car accident, that was a very salutary lesson. That was like a very, very red hot sword piercing your heart. And that was the beginning of my recovery. And I immediately took steps to address my alcoholism, my addiction. And here, 23, 24 years later, I'm happily sober. I don't miss alcohol, but I don't disrespect the fact that I'm an addict, and therefore my life is very much live in the day. Don't plan too much. Don't be thinking, oh, my nephew's getting married in July. How will I ever get through the wedding without having a beautiful glass of wine or a few brandies? You can't think like that. You just live in a day full of gratitude, full of hope, and trying to, as I say, not sweat the small stuff. Let it go. Hand over to that power that is there to help us all when we're in difficult times. Whoever your power is, your higher power. And I, because maybe of my background as well, I've always had a very strong faith. And today, funny how life kind of throws you curveballs and lands you in places that you'd never intended being in. I had never, ever planned on returning to Ireland. I'd never planned on living back in Donegal. But back I came. And when I stopped drinking, opportunity came knocking. And I found, because of work that I did in the UK and dealings that I had with the royal family, that one or two radio stations wanted sort of some comment at different times. And that led to Virgin Media asking me to join Ireland AM. And I was with them for many years. I haven't returned yet. Now that the pandemic's over, I hope to be back there again soon. RTE, Today Show, I do lots and lots of things like that, but doors kept opening. And of course, I'm very fortunate that Harvey's Point is a big part of my life. And most importantly, Jack, and that's where kind of my life has brought me, and that's why I do things like this with people like you. I hope that by an example and by kind of showing fortitude and courage, that I can tell young people in the Ireland of today that it's okay to be different, that, you know, you can fly your own flag and run your own mile and be yourself. And it's not always easy, because we all have this notion that we live in a very accepting liberal Ireland, and that once the gay marriage referendum went in our favor, etc., that everything's okay. It's not. The schoolyard is a very lonely place for people still. The gay arrow that's sort of shot regularly is still a very powerful, kind of hurtful weapon. And so often you hear that term when you see groups of young people, gay boy, gay boy. You know, it's very, very harsh. And also, we're a very macho society in Ireland. You know, GAA, and if you're not into the sport and the rugby and the GAA, you can be sidelined. And if you choose a more, a different route, or a more artistic route, or a more sort of, for want of a better word, secular kind of middle of the road route, people kind of, they're suspicious of you, and it's not easy. And in family, I think families still have to realize that the representations of gay people, and indeed addicts and other marginalized people on our screens and on our sort of social media, doesn't always tell the true story. And it's so easy for us as a society to be judgmental and pass remarkable. And when I hear about these pastors in America who set up these sort of organizations that will invite me to join them so that they can make me straight, it's just bizarre. I didn't choose to be gay. I was born gay. I could do nothing about it, because trust me, with the experience I had in my teens and in my 20s and 30s, I would have quite happily been straight, and very happy to be so, because the alternative, being gay, was a very lonely, painful place.
I think you kind of nailed everything on the head really well in that little bit there. You know, it is, Ireland is a bit of a place where Ireland just doesn't like difference for some reason, and I think you really hit that well on the head. So, well done, you. You also mentioned a little bit about how you became a TV presenter and getting on Virgin Media for Ireland and AM and all that. But you also mentioned that you had some connections to the royal family before you went on to Virgin Media. So how did you get your connections to the royal family?
You know, it's very hard to explain how those sort of things happen, because I happened to be in a career that was very much hospitality. If you had a kind of a certain circle in London, you sometimes met people who knew people. And then in some of the fine premises that I worked in, the royal family would have frequented those places. And in some cases, you would end up perhaps liaising with them. And then I was asked to join a charity, and the Princess of Wales, Diana, she was the patron. And I was very fortunate, and I say fortunate because Diana was a very special individual. She was, I always described, a beautiful bird that flew with a broken wing. And, you know, one thing leads to another, and then it's extraordinary that several years later, when her former husband, Charles, the Prince of Wales, came to Donegal a few years ago, I officially welcomed him and his wife to Donegal. And I would never have thought that they would be in Ireland. I never thought they would be in Donegal. And then when the Queen came, I was very much, I had some wonderful events that I was guested at. And it was just so nice that to see Ireland moving toward that kind of environment where any such visits are beneficial to our country, because I want to be an ambassador for my county and my country. And when Charles and Camilla came to Donegal, those pictures went round the world. And you know, you can't buy publicity like that. No, I've met most of the senior royals, in fact, down the years. I think, in fact, I've met virtually every one of them. Yeah, and I wouldn't envy them their life at all. Now they're going through a particularly difficult time at the moment for one reason or another. And you know what? I'm not a person that decides to comment on negative at the best of times. I try to keep a positive kind of twist on things. And Charles will come back to Ireland again very shortly. He will visit Southern Ireland, the Rock of Cashel and such places. And that'll be very exciting because, interestingly, in Donegal, when he talked to me about his mother being here, and I was able to tell him when I'd met her and that I was at many of the events. And interesting that he said, I'm so happy that she came because it had been her lifelong desire to visit Southern Ireland. And I thought that was lovely. And the fact that her visit was so beautiful and that the Irish people warmed to her and reached out. But people forget as well that, you know, the royal family were always kind of interest to the Irish people. We have a strange kind of a relationship with royals. You know, we always loved them. And even my mother, as a young woman, if there was a magazine with Princess Margaret or the Queen on it, those magazines would sell more copies in Ireland per head of population than any other country in the world. Isn't it odd? But I suppose we're all fascinated by showbiz, by the glitz, the glamour, the royalty, you know, that whole thing about the young princesses or princes or superstars. There's, you know, it's a little bit of gold dust to shake on sometimes dreary days, and why not? It's kind of harmless.
And since you've actually met practically nearly all of the royal family members, why don't you sort of name the ones that you met and all that, and sort of what they were like to you in your company and all that? Because I think a lot of people would be quite interested to know what they're actually like in person.
The Queen is the most gracious lady one would ever meet. She has the most impeccable manners I've ever experienced. Charles is an absolute gentleman. He is a product of his upbringing as well. He's a little bit reticent and a little bit sort of shy, I would suggest. His wife, Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, is just great crack. And, you know, when we were walking around Donegal, where all the people were behind barriers, and I was strolling with them, and Charles was chatting away to different people. At one stage, he sort of stayed too long with one group, and Camilla went up and gave him a good sort of elbow and to get him to move on. And I said to her jokingly, I said, I saw that, Mom. And she burst out laughing and I burst out laughing. And then Charles turned around and said, what are you two giggling at? You know, so there's real people behind those sort of kind of perceived images we have. Princess Anne is a complete no-nonsense lady, great character. And she famously said once when somebody referred to her children as royal, she said, my children are not royal. They happen to just have the Queen as their grandmother. And that's the kind of no-nonsense person she is. And on another occasion, because her house is quite close to Prince Charles's country seat at Highgrove, they suggested that she would be visiting and he would be visiting her, and she said, good grief, not at all, he's far too grand to come to my house, you know. So there's, you know, they're a family, they're normal. Now they're not normal obviously, but they're normal, and when you're in their company, you just can't be a wee bit too nervous to you know me, I'd be cheeky, I'd chat away, but you have to respect as well that in most occasions like that you're a guest and that they may be on official business and you're fulfilling a role, and nobody ever really knows the royal family. You know, they have their coterie of very close friends and confidants. Outside of that, it's the firm, the business, the company, a job to be done. As the Queen says so regularly, never explain, never complain, get on with the job and do your best, you know.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Hopefully, any sort of people who are overly obsessed with the royal family will actually find that quite interesting. You also did, you know, as you mentioned as well, you're on Ireland AM, you're on the Today Show, and all that. Have you done any other things other than, you know, royal news? Did you cover any sort of entertainment news or interview anyone or whatnot?
Oh, I did all of that, and I interviewed some lovely people. My favorite was probably Joanna Lumley. She's just such a sweetheart, and we had the most wonderful interview. And I also covered the Prince William's wedding in London, and we had 4 days there, and we went to Fortnum and Mason, that Queen's Grocers. We went to milliners who are providing several hundred hats for the occasion. We went to interview the religious members who were going to perform the ceremony. It was just very exciting. And probably another favorite interview was with David Emmanuel, because when we were there for William's wedding, we wanted to get some kind of an insight into what it was like for him to be chosen to design Diana, the Princess of Wales' wedding dress. And that was just a gorgeous, gorgeous interview. We had afternoon tea at the Horse Guards Parade Hotel in London, looking out over Horse Guards. And it was just very touching and very interesting insight into Diana as well. So I've been very lucky. And then we were the first Irish group of people to do I'm a Celebrity Come Dine With Me. And I've done, you know, different things like that. And there's always been great crack, you know, and that was great fun.
Not only have you done TV work and all that, you're also a hotelier. So how did you become a hotelier?
Well, you know what, Jack? Hotel, catering, showbiz, they're all very closely related. If you're a hotel manager, you're a showman. You know, some of the great Irish hoteliers, like, for example, way back when Princess Grace used to come to Ireland and stay, you had Toddy O'Sullivan in the Gresham, who was a legend. You had Mr. Murphy, who managed Ashford Castle, who was another legend. They were very gregarious. They dressed impeccably. They were out amongst their guests, you know, that you're touched by that kind of showbiz thing in hotel life, because people come to a hotel and you know what? They want a bit of showbiz. They want to smile. They want to welcome. So it's a lovely, lovely career. And it was one that I've been in for my entire life. I always gravitated toward the business. And when I was traveling, working on cruise ships, I learned the hard way. I worked with some of the finest hotels in the world, again, doing the most menial jobs to moving up the ladder. So I've been very lucky in so many ways that career, it's a great career to take around the world, I always say. And I always say to young people, you know, if you're planning on doing some travel, then hotel keeping is a great way if you were traveling, because you might pitch up in Sydney and get a job in a bar. You might pitch up in Hawaii and get a job as a beach sort of host. You might, you know, it's just opens doors when you have some qualification or some love of hospitality that allows you those travel opportunities, or indeed to make a life abroad or in another country or in another culture. You know, it's in any hotel as well, you have several careers under one roof. You know, you could be an accountant, you could be a sales and marketing manager, you can be a hotel manager, you can be a restaurant manager, a food and beverage director. It's an interesting kind of life and great opportunity. And I suppose if we have any challenge as an industry, it's attracting people to come into our industry, because some people think it's kind of antisocial and whatever. It is to an extent, but the antisocial aspect of it is made up for 1,000-fold in the positives that come with it.
And you also have your own very own hotel now called Harvey's Point as a hotelier and everything. So, what's it like at Harvey's Point in Donegal?
Harvey's Point, I have now semi-retired because I reached a certain age that I thought I need to pursue a few other things because I'd written a book and it was launched just as the pandemic hit, which was a bit of a disadvantage for us. But I'll kind of reactivate that now that we're getting back to normal life again, or a new normal. Um, so Harvey's Point, beautiful luxury hotel sitting on the lake here in Donegal. Behind us, we have the Blue Stack Mountains, very elegant hotel, very wonderful team, great general manager, Noel Cunningham, who is a hotelier and a hospitality man to the tips of his fingers. The family who owned it, the Gisling family, the founder, Jody Gisling, and Deirdre McGlone, who's well known to many people in Ireland. She married Jody's brother, Mark, and they managed very successfully over a period of time to really put not just the hotel, but the hotel as part of the bigger Donegal story on the map. And it's a super place, and you really have to experience it, Jack. You'll just have to put sort of mum and granddad in the car and just take a trip up and have a wander about our beautiful Donegal. And I'm very lucky to have still an association as an ambassador for the hotel, because it affords me an opportunity to do all that I do, to sell Donegal. I'm also Donegal Person of the Year this year, so I get that recognition on the 2nd of April at a big gala ball in Dublin, which is a great honour. And it's just the reason I say that. 25 years ago, I was down and out. I'd lost everything, my house, my car, my respect, my dignity. I thought there's no way back. And here, all those years later, everything has turned around in a positive way. So I want people who may listen to this to know that no matter how low you get, that somehow or other there is a way back, and never to give up hope. And Oscar Wilde talked about, lying in the gutter but looking at the stars. When you're lying in the gutter, trust me, it's hard to see those stars. So it's about the only thing I disagree with Oscar Wilde on. But I do know that if you find the resolve and ask for the help that's out there, and help comes in different guises, in different sort of forms, in different ways, that you can turn that corner and return to a life, as the sort of books tell us in our addiction sort of groups, a life beyond your wildest dreams. And it can happen. And I'm not trying to be pretentious. I'm not trying to be oversimplifying something that is of such seriousness or patronizing. I'm merely saying, don't give up hope. Hold on to hope. You can get help. You can sort of claw your way back to a life that is not only bearable, but enjoyable, fulfilling, and find peace. Peace is such a hard thing to find. To be peaceful. The French call it je suis content. To be content, to be content is not to sweat the small stuff, not to let those anxieties and worries control your day, but to put them where they belong, in an area where you say, I'll sort you out later. Challenge yourself to deal with it and move on. And that's how peace and contentment I found. That's how I found it.
And as well as that, as you also mentioned, you became Person of the Year and everything in Donegal. So what does it feel like being Person of the Year in Donegal? And how does it feel?
It's, you know what, it's not an egotistical thing, but it's such an honor. And to get a recognition from your peers, from your community, as part of a bigger picture, It's very fulfilling and very rewarding and very beautiful. And with everything comes responsibility. And if you are honored with a title or with some accolade, you have to try and ensure that in accepting that, that you also accept that you have to give something back and that you continue to give something back. But yes, it's such a huge honor. And as I say, I'm fortunate. I have a lovely platform. I have a national profile that is most helpful for my charity endeavors. And to have Harvey's Point as my calling card, it's tremendously helpful, because it's a way of us and me saying, you know, Donegal is also very special. Come up to the Northwest, see what we're all about. We're not the back of beyonds. Come see us, come visit.
And speaking about Harvey's Point again, because you said, you know, come over to Donegal and see Harvey's Point. What time of year is actually the best time to go up to Donegal, see Harvey's Point, and just see Donegal in general? What's the best time of the year?
Well, you know, I always say, because I walk and I cycle and do things like that, if you waited for the perfect weather, one wouldn't do anything. Donegal has beautiful seasons. You could get all 4 seasons in one day in Donegal. It never loses its beauty, because you have mountain, hills, the ocean, the rivers, the lakes. It's quite stunning. And I suppose pandemic helped insofar as new developments happened, new tourist attractions sort of appeared. There was a greater kind of, for want of a better word, need to provide something more attractive to keep people in the county and to make sure they enjoy their visit, apart from the amazing scenery. And because of that, you know, you have just wonderful kind of venues, like, you know, you have Waterworld in Bundoran, you have Wild Ireland, that extraordinary man who, you know, rescued bears and that, and he has this marvelous Wild Ireland sort of park in Donegal. You have out at Rafo, you have beautiful Oakfield Park, which is one of the most stunning houses and gardens in the world, and they have a 4-gauge steam railway that runs for about 4 or 5 kilometers. They do Santa at Christmas, and children can go on the train the rest of the year round. They have a beautiful cafe and restaurant. You know, you have so many lovely things. Our towns, Donegal town is steeped in history, going back to Plantation of Ulster, the Flight of the Earls. We have the castle. Even Prince Charles was sort of sorry he couldn't spend more time in Donegal. Then for walkers and people who are interested in climbing, and these sort of sea stacks now have become quite an adrenaline rush and buzz for such enthusiasts. We have a lot of those around our coast. Stunning beaches, water sports, beautiful hotels, beautiful restaurants, beautiful pubs. No, it's a great spot to come.
See, it seems to have absolutely everything anyways.
Well, I would say that, wouldn't I? But it really has. It genuinely has, Jack. Yeah.
You also mentioned a little bit that you have a book that's already out, and you're going to be kind of promoting that a little bit more. So I thought, you know what, why not you promote the book? It's called Noel Cunningham's Guide to Modern Irish Manners. Talk to me all about the book, just how you came to write it, and, you know, what it was like writing the book, and yeah, just fill in all the blanks.
I have a lot of contact with schools. I do a lot of work with transition year students in some schools. I think manners will, as my late father taught me, bring you around the world. I think it's something we should always bear in mind when we're dealing with young people, that we impress on them that good manners are still important, courtesy is still important, to know how to behave in society. And the book it's more than just about saying yes, please, and thank you. It's about how to organize the perfect wedding, for example. What happens at your Debs? I have covered all what I call the major events in life that we as society encounter, right up to and including funerals, and what the protocols and etiquette should be. It's light, it's fun, a little few stories about people I've met and experiences I've had. And I would honestly say I'm going to, now that we're getting out of pandemic, I'm going to liaise and speak very, very seriously with the Minister for Education, because I would like the book to become part of certainly a transition year program or the school library, or it should almost be a subject in schools. Because, for example, I mean, to go to an interview, there's a whole section on how to prepare and go for interview. It's just a very helpful little book, and it's available through O'Brien Press and in all good stores. But as I say, after a pandemic, it kind of everything got kind of lost during pandemic. We were just in the business of surviving. But I would advise anybody who's listening to go onto O'Brien Press or go into one of the good bookstores like Eason's or Dupre or whatever, Dupre, and just get a copy. It's a fantastic little book that will never go out of date, and it's really a little mine of information that's valuable for every age and every group.
Well, I'll have to get it anyways because it sounds really interesting. So yeah, it's going to be at all the good bookstores, so that's good. And yeah, about the fact that the book didn't really sort of launch very well because of the whole pandemic thing. Yeah, I had the same thing happen to me with my own short film. I released it in like February 29th, and then like 14 days later it was all lockdown and stuff. So it wasn't the best time to release a movie or a book or anything. So hopefully we'll all get to now sort of promote the stuff that we worked on back at that time.
Absolutely. So two things: get out, find Jack's film, do what has to be done, and my book, and then life can really return to normal. You were just unlucky, Jack. You were just unlucky, as I was, because we had a beautiful launch in Dublin, we had a beautiful launch in Donegal, I had a beautiful launch in Cork. A lot of lovely people who are in the public eye, whom I know and who are great friends of mine. They all supported me. Lorraine Keane, Gay Byrne's wife, Kathleen Byrne, and Mary Kennedy launched it in Dublin at the Guinness Storehouse. We had a lot of positive around the launch. And then, like your film, a couple of weeks later, the country and the world closed down because of a little virus that taught us all: you are not so powerful, great public. You are not so in control of your lives as you thought. I am much more powerful. I can wipe you all out. So the least we can do from that sort of very real experience we've come through is to be a little bit less judgmental, to be a little bit aware that we should not take life for granted. We should take life very seriously, cherish it, enjoy it, and take neither our friends or what happens around us for granted ever again, because our world can change overnight, as it did. And now we're clawing our way back to a new normality. And I hope that some of the lessons we learned about kindness and generosity and creativity and thinking outside of the box in different areas, that those lessons will not disappear with the pandemic, that some of those life lessons we will carry with us in a positive way.
I think you nailed it on the head once again, and we could keep nailing it on the head for all day, but we're going to have to somewhat end it somewhere. So I thought what I'll do is I'm going to ask you a couple of crazy questions I have. I usually do with my guests a couple of crazy questions where I ask them a couple of funny little mad questions. So the first one I'm going to ask you is perform the hardest tongue twister you know.
Oh God. The only one we did is the only did we one we sort of had as a child was she sells seashells on the seashores, and the seashells she sells are not from the sea anymore, or something like that. That's about the only tongue twister I know.
Well, it's good enough. It's good enough. The second one is, how jealous would you be if you found out that your friend got a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X before you?
I would be beyond livid, but it would depend entirely on who was gifting that or how it came about. Or why they got it before me. But again, good lesson there, don't let things like that bother you overly, because we could spend our life envying people and envying what they have, or why did they get that and I didn't? Why have they got that and I haven't? How come they have a sort of super souped up sort of Range Rover and I'm going around in my sort of trusted old sort of Robin Reliant? There's a lesson there. Don't sweat the small stuff. I would still be livid. I'd still be annoyed. It's mine. Why did I not get it?
But I think that was the most mature answer I've gotten to that question, so I'll give it to you. The next one is, would you screenshot an NFT for no reason?
No.
And why is that?
I don't know why. I hadn't thought about it before, but I think not.
And the final one is kind of more for a couple of people I know who are from America, because I actually told a couple of people I know in America that there's a TV station called Virgin, and they thought that that was the funniest thing ever. So I'll ask for them, how does it feel to appear on a TV station called Virgin?
Look, anybody who knows me, I'll appear on a TV station called whatever you want to call it. Yes, I can so understand that some people think, God, that's odd. Virgin, what a peculiar name. Then I just think of Richard Branson and I think, you know what? It's quite clever. Again, it's our obsession with kind of looking beyond something that is actually quite simple. Virgin is quite a unique name in so many ways. It's pioneering and it's leader, it's positive, so we won't even go down the other road. Yeah, it's okay.
Well, Noel, thank you very much for coming on. That was a really good interview. Is there any sort of last things you'd like to say?
Well, Jack, I refuse to accept my age because I'm really a teenager at heart, and I just hope that being on with a cool guy like you, that I all of a sudden get a whole new following from dead cool young guys around town, and I will be ever grateful to you. You're most charming and delightful company, and thank you for inviting me. And in closing, I guess all I'll say is live in the day and be grateful. If we can only learn to give that gratitude a twirl, just let's be grateful for all that we have, and we sometimes don't realize just how much we have, and it's very important to recognize that.
Oh, thank you very much anyways. And is there, do you want to give the book a little bit of a quick plug, and I'll give my film so we can give it a bit of publicity again?
Absolutely. Go out and buy a copy of Noel Cunningham's Guide to Modern Irish Manners. Trust me, if you don't enjoy it or if it's not helpful, you can send the bill to me and I will refund it personally, but I promise you will. O'Brien Press, the O'Brien Press, they'll sort it for you, or any good bookshop. I want hundreds of people to go in today and say to Easons and people like that, where's Noel Cunningham's book? I don't see it on the shelves. Where is it? And your film, please. I want to know about the film myself.
Yes, my short film. If you go to my YouTube channel, Jack Lucas Caffrey, which you may be already on if you're watching this on YouTube, you will find my short film Bad Boys, which I made from 2018 to 2020. It's a half an hour film. It's absolutely ridiculous, and you can even see me and the rest of the cast age in the film. Yes, I'm not kidding you. But yeah, we're trying to get it over 1,000. Come on, we need to do that. But yeah, that's the movie, Noel.
Good. Well, I'm going to immediately start promoting that too. We'll have you over 1,000 in jig time.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'd love to go over to Harvey's Point anyway. I have to bring my mum and Action John as well.
Most welcome. The red carpet will be out.
Thank you. Well, Noel, thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, speak to you soon.